Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. The U-Haul smelled like dust and old cardboard, a scent I'd been breathing for 3 days straight. My whole life was packed into the rattling metal box behind me, and I was driving it from Ohio to California to start over. It was a little after 2 in the morning, somewhere deep in the New Mexico desert. The radio had given up an hour ago, surrendering to a soft, constant hiss that was somehow more lonely than silence. Outside, the world was a void. The moon was a sliver, offering no light, so the universe was just what my headlights could find. A stretch of asphalt, a dotted yellow line pulling me forward, and endless, empty desert on either side. The sky was so black and so full of stars it felt like I was driving through space. It was the kind of beautiful that makes you feel small, like you could disappear out here and no one would ever know. I was tired. Not just sleepy, but a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that made my thoughts feel slow and sticky. My eyes burned. I was thinking about pulling over just for an hour when I saw them. Headlights. They appeared in my rearview mirror out of nowhere, a bright, aggressive glare closing the distance far too quickly. My heart gave a little jolt. Who else was out here? The lights grew until they filled the entire mirror, so close I couldn't see the shape of the car behind them. They were tailgating me, a big, dark SUV of some kind, pushing me to go faster on a road I didn't know. I felt a prickle of annoyance, then fear. This was stupid, dangerous. Then the world exploded in red and blue. The flashing lights strobed across my dashboard, painting the cab in frantic, silent flashes. My stomach dropped. I was being pulled over. My mind raced through the checklist of anxieties. Was I speeding? Did I drift over the center line? My taillights, are they working? It's a universal feeling, that sudden, cold dread. You're in trouble, even if you don't know why. I slowed down, my hands slick on the steering wheel, and pulled the heavy truck onto the gravel shoulder. The air settled, the only sounds the rumbling engine and the blood pounding in my ears. I watched in the mirror as the SUV, a black Ford Explorer with no markings, pulled in behind me. The flashing lights continued their silent, rhythmic panic. I turned on my interior dome light, just like my dad always told me to do. Keep your hands on the wheel. Don't make any sudden moves. A figure got out and started walking toward me. The silhouette was tall, broad-shouldered, but something about the way he moved felt wrong. It wasn't the confident, measured stride of a police officer. It was slower, almost hesitant. He held a big, heavy-looking flashlight, and he kept the beam pointed at the ground until he was right beside my window. Then he shot it directly into my eyes, blinding me. "License and registration," he said. His voice was flat, without the crisp authority I expected. "Of course, officer." I mumbled, squinting against the light. I told him my wallet was in my purse on the passenger seat, and I was going to reach for it. He just grunted. As I leaned over, the light followed me, and I got my first good look at him. His uniform was the right color, a desert tan, but it looked cheap. The fabric was wrinkled, and the patch on his shoulder was a simple circle with a star. Nothing like the official state police insignia I'd seen online. A small detail. A stupid thing to notice, but my brain snagged on it. I handed him my license and the rental agreement for the truck. He looked at them for a long time, the flashlight beam still fixed on my face. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. "Where you headed, Chloe?" he asked, using my first name. It felt too familiar. "Los Angeles," I said. "I'm moving." "All by yourself?" A cold knot formed in my stomach. "Yes." "Anyone expecting you?" he asked, his tone still flat, conversational. "Anyone know you're on this particular road, at this particular time?" My mind went blank. This wasn't a traffic stop. The questions were all wrong. My internal alarm, which had been a quiet hum of anxiety, was now screaming. "This is wrong. This is all wrong." I tried to keep my voice steady. "My parents know my route. I'm supposed to check in with them in the morning." It was a lie. I hadn't spoken to them since I'd left Arizona. He was quiet for another moment. Then he tapped the window with his flashlight. "Your license plate isn't coming up in our system. I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle and come back to my car while I sort this out." No. That was the one rule every woman knows. You don't get out of the car. You never, ever get out of the car. My body went into what I can only describe as a freeze response. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My brain was a storm of panic, but my limbs were locked in place. He saw my hesitation. "It's just procedure, ma'am," he said, a hint of impatience in his voice. "Now, step out of the truck." Slowly, like I was moving through water, I opened the door. The cold desert air hit me, smelling of dust and sage. He put a hand on my elbow to guide me, and his touch was cold and firm. As he walked me toward his SUV, every instinct I had was screaming at me to run. My feet felt like lead. He opened the back door of the Explorer, not the front. "Have a seat in here while I run your info again." I peered inside. There was no cage, no computer mount, no police radio. Just a bare, dark interior. And on the passenger seat I saw it. A coil of thick rope and a roll of silver duct tape, sitting there as plain as day. That's what broke the spell. The sight of those two objects sent a jolt of pure, undiluted terror through me. My body switched from freeze to fight. I shoved him, hard, catching him off balance. I didn't wait to see him fall. I just ran. I sprinted the few yards back to the U-Haul, my lungs on fire, fumbling with the keys I'd managed to palm before I got out. He was shouting behind me, no longer a flat monotone, but a guttural roar of rage. I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the door, hitting the lock button just as his hand grabbed the handle. He started pounding on the window, his face twisted into a mask of fury. I could see him clearly now in the flashing lights of his own car. He wasn't a cop. He was a monster wearing a costume. I jammed the key in the ignition, my hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries. The engine roared to life. I threw the truck into drive and stomped on the gas, not even looking as I swerved back onto the highway. The U-Haul fishtailed on the gravel, but I corrected it, my eyes locked on the road ahead. As soon as I had a signal, I called 911, my voice a ragged, hysterical sob. I told the dispatcher everything: the desolate road, the unmarked SUV, the wrong uniform, the rope. She was calm, professional. She took my location and told me to keep driving, to not stop for any reason. "We're getting a lot of interference, ma'am," she said after a moment of static. "But I need you to listen carefully. We don't have any active units in that specific sector tonight." My blood ran cold. "What?" But he pulled me over. He had lights. There was another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was grave. "Ma'am, we did have a state trooper on that highway. We lost contact with him about an hour ago. We just found his vehicle, abandoned, 10 miles east of your location." I gripped the phone, the plastic slick with sweat. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The man on the road, the one with the cheap uniform and the dead eyes, wasn't just impersonating an officer. He had become one. The reason the real police weren't coming to save me was because they were already at the crime scene he had created, and I had been meant to be his second victim of the night. We were driving through the darkest part of Wisconsin, on a 2-lane highway that cut through the woods like a black river. My girlfriend, Maya, was asleep in the passenger seat, her head resting against the window. It was late, close to midnight, and the only light came from my headlights carving a tunnel through the endless wall of trees. I had the radio on low, some indie band singing softly about heartbreak, and the atmosphere was peaceful, almost hypnotic. We were on our way back from a weekend camping trip, feeling that perfect kind of tired, full of fresh air and campfire smoke. That's when I saw the movement, a flicker in the periphery, on the right side of the road. I slowed down a bit, my eyes scanning the dense undergrowth. Just a deer. I muttered to myself, not wanting to wake Maya. It was common enough out here. But it didn't leap across the road and vanish. It stayed in the trees, a dark shape keeping pace with the car. I was going about 50 miles an hour, but it moved effortlessly, a fluid shadow flitting between the thick trunks of pine and birch. A strange feeling, a mix of curiosity and unease, started to creep up my spine. Deer don't do that. They don't run parallel to cars for long. They panic. This thing didn't seem panicked at all. "Liam, what's wrong?" Maya's voice was thick with sleep. She'd felt the car slow down. "I don't know," I said, my eyes still glued to the woods. "There's something running alongside us." She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and peered into the darkness. "I don't see anything." "It's there," I insisted, "just at the edge of the light." As I said it, the creature moved through a small clearing, and for a split second, it was fully illuminated in the headlights. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a deer. It was tall, hunched over, and it was running on 2 legs. Its limbs were long and thin, and its head was shaped like a wolf's, with a long snout and pointed ears. It was the most unnatural thing I had ever seen. "Did you see that?" Maya whispered, her voice trembling. I couldn't answer. My hands were gripping the steering wheel, so tight my knuckles were white. I pressed my foot down on the accelerator, pushing the car to 60, then 70. The engine whined in protest, but the creature didn't fall behind. It matched our speed without any visible effort. Its loping, bipedal gait impossibly fast, impossibly steady. The rational part of my brain was screaming that this couldn't be happening. Animals don't move like that. Nothing moves like that. But I was seeing it. We both were. It was real. Then it turned its head. In the faint, reflected glow from the headlights, we saw its eyes. They were a bright, piercing yellow. And they weren't looking at the car. They were looking right at us. There was an intelligence in that gaze, a cold, predatory focus that turned my blood to ice. This wasn't some dumb animal. It knew we were in here. It was watching us. Our car, this metal and glass box that had always felt so safe, suddenly felt as fragile as an eggshell. "Oh my God, Liam, speed up!" Maya cried, her voice cracking. The creature veered out of the woods, dropping onto all fours and landing on the asphalt behind us with a heavy, solid sound. It was even faster now, a terrifying, low-slung beast that looked like something out of a nightmare. It was gaining on us, its dark form growing larger in the rearview mirror. I was pushing 85 on a winding road I'd never driven before, the tires screaming around every turn. I was terrified of crashing, but I was more terrified of what would happen if that thing caught us. Up ahead through the trees, I saw a faint glow. A town. Hope surged through me, a desperate, frantic wave. "Hang on!" I yelled. I floored it, the car shaking as it hit 90. The creature was right behind us, so close I could almost imagine I heard the click of its claws on the pavement over the roar of the engine. But as we got closer to the town, as the first lonely streetlight came into view, the creature slowed. It broke off its pursuit, veering sharply off the road and disappearing back into the impenetrable darkness of the woods. It was as if it knew it couldn't be seen in the light. I didn't slow down until we were in the center of the small, sleeping town. I pulled into the bright, sterile lot of a 24-hour gas station and killed the engine. We sat there for a full minute, shaking, gasping for air, the silence of the car deafening. We stumbled out, leaning against the doors, our legs feeling like jelly. The clerk inside, a bored-looking teenager, glanced at us and then went back to his phone, oblivious to the fact that we had just outrun something that shouldn't exist. We tried to explain it to him, babbling about a wolf or a bear, something on 2 legs that ran as fast as a car. He just shrugged and said, "Probably just a dog, man." After about 20 minutes, our heart rates started to return to normal. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a hollow, trembling exhaustion in its wake. "We should check the car," I said, my voice hoarse. "Make sure I didn't hit anything." We walked around the vehicle, running our hands over the panels, looking for any damage from my reckless driving. The car was fine. No dents, no dings. I was about to breathe a sigh of relief when Maya stopped at the passenger side. "Lem," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I walked over to her, and I saw them, starting from the rear bumper and running all the way to the front fender. There were 3 long, deep gouges in the paint. They were perfectly parallel, like something had raked its claws down the entire length of the car. The metal was scraped raw, gleaming under the fluorescent lights of the gas station. They were fresh. I ran my fingers over the scratches, the cold metal sending a shiver through my entire body. I looked back down the dark, empty highway we had just come from. A horrifying realization washed over me. The creature hadn't been chasing us. It hadn't been struggling to keep up. It had been right there, beside us the whole time, close enough to reach out and touch us whenever it wanted. It wasn't a chase. It was a game. and it had let us win. My name is Frank, and I've been driving trucks for 30 years. I've seen it all: whiteout blizzards in the Rockies, 100-mile-an-hour crosswinds in Wyoming, traffic jams in LA that could make a saint curse. I'm not a superstitious man. I believe in what I can see and touch: the rumble of my diesel engine, the weight of the load behind me, the solid feel of the road under my tires. But there's one stretch of highway that tests that belief every time I drive it. It's a 450-mile piece of British Columbia's Highway 16, running from Prince George to the coast at Prince Rupert. Most people just call it the Highway of Tears. I took a high-paying job last fall, a dedicated run hauling lumber to the port. It meant driving that highway back and forth twice a week. I'd heard the stories, of course. Dozens of women, mostly indigenous, who had vanished or been found murdered along that road since the 70s. It's a tragedy, a national shame. But to me, they were just stories. Sad but distant. The first few runs were uneventful. But the place, it has a weight to it. The landscape is beautiful in a brutal, intimidating way. The mountains are jagged and gray, clawing at a sky that's almost always overcast. The forests are a deep, dark green, so thick and vast they feel like they could swallow the road without a trace. There are long stretches with no towns, no houses, no cell service, just you, your truck, and a silence so profound it feels like a presence. You feel the history of the place in the pit of your stomach. At every lonely gas station and diner, the community bulletin boards are papered with them, missing posters, faded, curling at the edges, some of them decades old. Young women smiling for a school photo, frozen in time. Ramona Wilson, Alberta Williams, Madison Scott. Their names become a litany in your head. You start to see their faces in the shadows between the trees. It was on my 4th or 5th run that the paranoia really set in. It was late October, and night came early. The rain was constant, a steady drumming on the roof of my cab that made the world outside feel blurry and unreal. The CB radio, usually a comfort of crackling voices and bad jokes, was dead silent, just static. But sometimes, in the hiss and pop, I'd swear I could hear whispers, fragments of words lost in the noise. Every pair of headlights that appeared in my mirrors felt like a threat. I'd watch them, my heart pounding, until they passed. I started seeing things at the edge of my vision, a flicker of movement in the trees, a shape standing by the roadside that would be gone when I looked again. I told myself it was fatigue, my mind playing tricks on me in the dark, but the feeling of being watched was constant, oppressive. It wasn't a person I felt watching me. It was the road itself. The whole damn highway felt like a graveyard, and I was just driving through it. One evening, I was about 100 miles east of Prince Rupert. The sun was setting, bleeding purple and orange across the wet, black asphalt. The rain had finally stopped, and a thick mist was rising from the forests, clinging to the road in ghostly white sheets. My headlights cut through the fog, illuminating a world of swirling gray. And then I saw her, a figure, walking on the shoulder of the road, heading west, the same direction I was going. As I got closer, I could see it was a young woman. She looked indigenous, with long dark hair. She wore a simple jacket and jeans, and she wasn't hitchhiking. She was just walking, her head down, as if she had a long way to go. My blood ran cold. Everything I'd heard, every poster I'd seen, every ghost story whispered by other drivers, it all came rushing back. My company has a strict no-riders policy. It's an instant firing offense, and every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to keep driving. Don't get involved. It's not your problem. But I slowed the truck down. What if she was in trouble? What if her car had broken down miles back? Out here with no cell service, a person could walk for days without seeing anyone. What if I drove past, and she became the next face on a missing poster? The thought made me feel sick. The conflict inside me was a physical thing, a knot in my gut. I could feel the eyes of all those missing women on me. I slowed the rig to a crawl, my hand hovering over the switch for my hazard lights. I decided I had to stop. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. I pulled the truck onto the wide gravel shoulder about 50 yards ahead of her, the air brakes hissing in the quiet twilight. I looked in my passenger side mirror, waiting for her to walk into its frame. I waited and waited. The road behind me was empty. She was gone. I sat there for a full minute. my mind refusing to accept what my eyes were telling me. I got out of the truck, my heavy boots crunching on the wet gravel. I grabbed my mag light from the cab and shone its powerful beam back down the road. Nothing. The mist swirled, but the shoulder was empty. There were no other roads, no houses, nowhere for her to have gone. I walked back to where I'd seen her. There were no footprints on the soft, damp earth. It was as if she had never been there at all. Shaking, I got back in my cab and pulled onto the highway, my mind reeling. A ghost, a warning. Or was I finally losing it? I pushed the truck a little faster than I should have, wanting to put as much distance as possible between me and that spot. About 5 miles down the road, I came around a sharp, blind curve, one that was hidden by a rock face and a thick stand of cedars. My headlights suddenly filled with something huge and dark. A logging truck, its lights off, was stalled sideways, completely blocking both lanes. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screaming in protest, the whole rig jackknifing as the load of lumber shifted behind me. I wrestled with the wheel, and the truck skidded to a stop, the front of my bumper just inches from the side of the trailer. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break. I sat there, breathing heavily, the smell of burnt rubber filling the cab. If I hadn't stopped, if I hadn't pulled over for the woman who wasn't there, I would have hit that truck at 60 miles an hour. I wouldn't have stood a chance. I never found out what happened to the driver of that logging truck. By the time I got my rig straightened out and crept around it, it was just an empty, dark shape on the road. I never saw the woman again, either. But now, whenever I drive that highway, I don't feel like I'm alone. And when I see a shape in the mist, I slow down. Because on the highway of tears, you never know if you're looking at a ghost, or if a ghost is looking out for you. I was in my final year of nursing school, and the drive from my university in Tennessee back home to Virginia for Christmas was one I knew by heart. But that night, a snowstorm had shut down the interstate, forcing me onto a network of winding, 2-lane back roads through the Appalachian Mountains. It was beautiful, in a spooky sort of way. The snow was coming down in thick, silent flakes, muffling the world and coating the dense pines in white. But the roads were slick, and my little sedan wasn't built for this. My cell phone had lost its signal an hour ago. I was completely alone. I was navigating a particularly tight curve when my headlights swept across a scene that made my heart leap into my throat. A car, a dark blue SUV, was flipped on its side in a ditch by the side of the road. Steam was rising from its undercarriage into the cold air. A few feet away, a figure was lying motionless in the snow. My training kicked in before the fear did. My internal monologue was a checklist: scene safety. Check for traffic, none. Check for response. I pulled my car over, threw on my hazard lights, and grabbed the first aid kit I always kept in my trunk. "Hello," I shouted as I approached, my boots crunching in the fresh snow. "Can you hear me? My name is Sarah. I'm a nursing student. I'm here to help." There was no answer. The figure didn't move. As I got closer, a feeling of deep unease began to settle over me. Something was wrong. The scene was too quiet, too still. There was no smell of gasoline or burnt oil. The car in the ditch, it wasn't badly damaged. The windows weren't even broken. It looked like it had been placed there, not crashed. I was about 10 feet from the person on the ground when I heard it. A sound from the woods to my left. A metallic scrape, like a shovel on rock, followed by the snap of a heavy branch. I froze. I turned my head slowly. 2 men were stepping out from behind a thicket of snow-covered rhododendrons. One was tall and thin, holding a tire iron that he tapped rhythmically against his leg. The other was shorter, broader, and he was methodically uncoiling a length of rope. Then, the person on the ground groaned and started to push themselves up. It was a third man. It was a trap. The world narrowed to a single, terrifying point. My nursing training vanished, replaced by a primal, animal instinct. Adrenaline flooded my body, hot and sharp. My first aid kit dropped from my numb fingers into the snow. I didn't think. I just ran. I sprinted back towards my car, my lungs burning with the icy air. I could hear them behind me, their heavy footsteps pounding in the snow, much faster than I would have thought possible. They weren't shouting, which was somehow more terrifying. It was a silent, purposeful pursuit. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers clumsy and stupid with fear. I finally got the door open and threw myself inside, slamming it shut and hitting the locks. The man with the tire iron reached the car a second later. He didn't even try the handle. He just swung. The passenger window exploded inward, showering me with a spray of shattered glass. I screamed, shielding my face with my arm as he reached through the empty frame, his hand grasping for me. I twisted the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered, then caught. I slammed the car into reverse, stomping on the accelerator. The tires spun uselessly in the snow for a heart-stopping second. Then they gripped. The car shot backwards, swerving onto the narrow road. I cranked the wheel, put it in drive, and floored it, not daring to look back. I drove for what felt like an hour, my body shaking uncontrollably, tears and melted snow streaming down my face. I didn't slow down until I saw the welcome glow of a gas station sign and the blessed sight of a single bar of cell service on my phone. I pulled in, locked the doors, and called 911. My voice was a mess, a torrent of panicked, disjointed words. I told the dispatcher everything: the back road, the flipped car, the 3 men, the tire iron. He tried to calm me down, his voice a steady presence in my chaos. "Okay, Mum, I need you to take a deep breath," he said. "We're dispatching a state trooper to your location. Can you describe your vehicle for me?" It's a silver Honda Civic," I stammered, looking around my car as if seeing it for the first time. "A 2018. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint clicking of a keyboard. When the dispatcher spoke again, his voice had changed. It was tight, strained. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. We received a 911 call from that same area about 20 minutes ago. The caller was a young man. He was panicked. He said he'd just come across a bad accident. A silver Honda Civic flipped over in a ditch. The breath left my body in a rush. I couldn't speak." The dispatcher continued, his voice grim. "He said he saw a woman lying in the snow nearby, and he was going to help her. Then the line went dead. We've been trying to get a unit out there, but the roads are bad." I dropped the phone. A wave of nausea so intense it made the world spin washed over me. The trap I had just escaped, it had been reset. The men hadn't used their own car as bait. They had used the car of their last victim. And the young man on the phone, the one who had stopped to help the person he thought was me, he had already been caught. My friend Alex is Navajo, born and raised on the reservation in Arizona. I'm a photographer from Chicago. We couldn't be more different, but we bonded over a shared love for the stark, alien beauty of the desert. Last spring, we took a road trip out to his territory so I could capture the night sky. The kind of sky you can't see anywhere else. A black velvet cloth so thick with stars it looks like spilled diamonds. We drove for hours down a dirt road that wasn't on any map, deep into a landscape of rust-colored messes and strange rock formations that looked like sleeping giants. We were miles from anywhere, completely off the grid. As we set up our tent and cameras, the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of fire and lavender. The silence was absolute. As darkness fell, I started whistling a tune just out of habit. Alex shot me a look, his eyes wide with genuine fear. "Don't do that," he said, his voice low. "Not out here. Not after dark." I laughed. "Why not?" "Scared of the coyotes." "It's not coyotes you need to worry about," he said, and he wasn't smiling. "There are rules out here, Ben. Things you don't do. You don't whistle at night. You don't point at strange lights. And you don't say the name of the things that walk on all fours." I knew he was talking about the legend he'd mentioned before. Skinwalkers. I thought it was just folklore, scary stories to tell around a campfire. "Come on, Alex. You don't really believe in that stuff, do you?" "It's not about belief," he snapped, his voice tight with an emotion I couldn't place. "Anger. Or maybe terror. It's about respect. You're a guest here. You don't know what you're messing with. Speaking of them, it calls them." The intensity in his voice shut me up. We finished setting up in a tense silence. Later, huddled in our sleeping bags, the cold of the desert night seeping into our tent, I felt a pang of guilt. I had been a jerk, disrespecting my friend's culture. I promised myself I'd apologize in the morning. I never got the chance. I was woken up sometime in the dead of night by a sound. It was a voice whispering from just outside the tent. Ben, help me." It was my voice. I sat bolt upright, my heart instantly hammering against my ribs. It was my voice, but it was wrong. Distorted, like a bad recording, thin and reedy. I looked over at Alex. He was wide awake, his eyes fixed on the side of the tent, a look of pure horror on his face. He was right beside me. "Ben," the voice whispered again, closer this time. "I'm hurt. Let me in." "Don't answer." Alex breathed, his body rigid. "Don't make a sound." Then came a new noise, a scratching at the tent fabric. Not the claws of an animal, but the sound of fingernails, deliberately, slowly, dragging down the nylon right next to my head. I clamped a hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. The psychological torment went on for what felt like hours. We heard the frantic yipping of a coyote pack in the distance, a sound that suddenly cut off into a choked, human-like scream. We heard footsteps circling the tent, sometimes heavy like a man, sometimes light and quick like a dog. But the worst part was the mimicry. It used my voice. It used Alex's voice. It even mimicked the sound of Alex's mother, a woman I'd only met once, crying his name and begging him to come outside. It was intelligent. It was cruel. It was playing with us. Just before dawn, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying. We stayed in the tent, frozen with fear, until the first rays of sunlight hit the canvas. When we finally found the courage to look outside, our campsite was a disaster. Our gear was scattered everywhere, our food containers ripped open, but nothing was eaten. It was just vandalism, malice. And in the soft sand around the tent, there were tracks. They started as the prints of a large coyote. They circled the tent, and then, in one spot, they changed. The prints elongated, the stride widened, and they became the tracks of something that walked away on two legs. We didn't talk. We threw our gear into the truck in a frantic panic, and got out of there as fast as we could. As we sped down the dirt road, a cloud of dust billowing behind us, Alex was staring into the passenger side mirror. He let out a choked gasp. "Look," he whispered. I glanced in the rearview mirror. On a high, distant mesa, a lone figure stood watching us. It was a coyote, its silhouette sharp against the morning sky. It was too far away to see any details, but I didn't need to. I could feel its gaze. There was no animal curiosity in that stare. It was ancient, intelligent, and filled with a cold, bottomless hatred. Its eyes, even from that distance, felt human. Months have passed. I'm back in Chicago, surrounded by the noise and light of millions of people. I tell myself it was a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by the isolation and Alex's scary stories. I tell myself I'm safe. But last night, I woke up at 3 a.m. My apartment is on the 10th floor, and my bedroom window was open just a crack to let in the cool night air. From the street far below, faint but clear, I heard a sound. A familiar sound that made every hair on my body stand on end. It was my own voice whispering my name, asking me to come outside and help.